Heavy Cardboard, Episode 7, Panamax. Coming to you from the only city to turn down hosting the Olympics, beautiful Denver, Colorado. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, where we talk medium and heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx, no, but for real, and other related topics in the board gaming hobby. We're your hosts. I'm Edward.
And I'm Tony.
Episode 7. We finally get our hands on a copy of the game, which was both of our number one most anticipated game of 2014, Panamax.
Yes.
So, we'll let you know if it's lived up to expectations or not. To get a hold of us, we got our website, heavycardboard.com, our email, heavycardboard@gmail.com, our Twitter account, which is where you can best reach us, @heavycardboard, Facebook, Heavy Cardboard. Also, if y'all would take a second and give us a rating on iTunes, for those that go through iTunes, we would greatly appreciate it. So real quick, before we get started, a little bit of, we're going to do something a little different, a little current events lately, because both of us have had significant things go on.
It's been a big week.
Yeah. So a week ago, my wife and Greyhound were attacked by another dog that was off leash just a couple of steps from our house. Thankfully, all will recover. Trips that night to the ER for both the missus and our Greyhound Asher. Stitches for the wife, surgery and staples for the puppy dog. But everyone's healing, thankfully. I wanted to give a quick thank you to all those on Twitter that reached out with well wishes and everything. I really genuinely appreciate that. They are and were, at the time, much appreciated. Yeah, it's been a bit of an eventful week on my end, but it could have been much worse. All things considered, everyone's going to heal, everyone's going to live, everyone's going to be all right.
Yep.
So how about you? What's been going on with you?
Nothing much, just changed jobs, you know.
Yeah,
So,
not much.
yeah. Same industry, different company. Left some old friends, found some new friends, new adventures.
Cool. And you said the first week went well?
First week went great.
Cool. Awesome.
I want to know, sir.
Yeah.
As we always lead off with, what games you've acquired. But
okay,
first off, we just had an amazing dinner that you cooked.
Thanks. It's probably the best meal I make. It's pollo ciudad, which is city chicken. But
city chicken.
Yeah, but it's a little bit fancier than that, I guess. But yeah, it came out all right.
We're recording this on Labor Day.
Yeah, happy Labor Day, not working Labor Day.
You especially, but I've been over here twice this week playing Panamax with you guys, and we've had a great weekend here. Yeah,
it's been good. It's been nice. We've had a lot of good friends over. Both you, your wife Robin, our buddy Matt, and also our buddy Chad.
Good way to calm the events of the week.
Seriously.
Into a really pleasurable weekend, and let's rock on.
Right, and now, we got a short week at work coming up, so it's a good way to kind of ease back into quote-unquote normalcy. So
normalcy.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And what would be more normal than hearing the list of games you've acquired?
It's embarrassing, actually. I think it's great.
Oh, wait a minute. I think it's great.
So, I didn't realize how many games recently I've acquired since our last podcast, which, a couple weeks ago. And then I was going through the list, and I was like, oh, yeah, and that, and that. And I was like, time to tone that down a little. Mama has told me that I am on hiatus acquiring games until BGG-Con.
Sounds like my wife.
Yeah, well, I see your list and I see my list.
Exactly.
And yeah, right. So real quick, I'm just going to run through them and list them pretty quick. First off, we have Panamax, obviously, that are shout out to our good buddy Brian, who muled it back for us. Another one from Gen Con is Rolling Freight, the expansion map, Great Britain and India. Ruins, which is 51st State / New Era expansion, has like 40 cards in it, so that's cool. The funny thing is about that real quick is Ignacy didn't even mention that this was like an afterthought. It was all Imperial Settlers at Gen Con on Twitter and at Gen Con from what I hear.
Just suddenly this was there?
No, it was like off to the side like the redheaded stepchild.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so also going on, got Fire in the Lake, my P500 copy, which hopefully in the next couple episodes we'll be able to play enough to review. The Climbers, which is a abstract building block game, which I've talked about in previous episodes. I finally landed the copy. Excited about that. Among the Stars and all the expansions. Guy was selling it cheap, so I was like, why not? Sure.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective. it's a deduction game from like 80 or 81, I think it is. But it's gotten this reinvigoration of energy thanks to a couple of folks. The Shut Up and Sit Down guys, their video is absolutely hysterical and awesome. They sold me on it, but also another person that we follow and follows us on Twitter, Tiffany reviews Sherlock Holmes, also really funny and really good. We'll link to both of those in the show notes, so definitely go check those out. Still going. 1846 and 18 New York from Deep Thought Games via Golden Spike Games. John Tamplin, the guy who owns and runs Deep Thought Games, has done an experiment because the queue for getting these games published is anywhere from 2 to 5 years right now. He allowed these other companies who's been making the games for him partially on the side anyway, he's allowed them to actually take the orders now. And the turnaround time was a month as opposed to 2 to 5 years. So that was awesome. Cannot wait to get those
of magnitude quicker.
Yeah, ridiculous. So big shout out. Thanks, John. I'm sure he's not going to listen to this, but nonetheless, I appreciate and I'm glad they did that on at least a few games. City Hall from Tasty Minstrel Games, designed by Michael Keller.
That was on our list.
It was, as well as Captains of Industry, which hopefully will be out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You haven't got that yet.
Right. No, that's not going to be out until probably around the new year. But excited to play it. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to play it this weekend. I really wanted to because I wanted to get it in on the podcast. But unfortunately, just too many games, too little time, yada. Lastly, the last thing I want to bring up is I sold, and normally we don't mention, what we've gotten rid of. But
de-acquired.
If you will, I sold my Memoir 44 collection, which was nearly complete.
That's a good move.
Right. I knew you would say that. Thankfully, that sold and helped offset some of the vet bills and everything that we've had. So that was awesome to be able to unload that. An interesting note on that. Our buddy Chad, who we've been playing games with all weekend,
Let's call him Paul.
Okay, sure. Paul. He mentioned, so some of the guys that he enjoys playing ASL with enjoy playing Command & Color's Ancients, and they also enjoy playing Command & Color Napoleonics. Now, oddly, they hate Memoir 44. And so you're thinking, yeah, exactly. You're giving me this look like, wait, what? Because the system's the exact same thing. It's just different themed, right? Along with like Battle of Westeros, Battle Lord,
it's uniformly the same and terrible.
Right. Well, here's the thing. The reason they don't have a problem with Ancients and Napoleonics is because when you draw the hand of cards, you can't command necessarily the people and the forces and the sides of the board that you want to command. In Ancients and in Napoleonics, they didn't have radios. So it's possible that you couldn't get orders to these people. So thematically, it makes more sense.
It's a mental thing too.
Right. And so they can wrap their head around that, and they're okay with that, whereas a Memoir 44 just doesn't make sense because there's radios. So I thought that was really interesting. I never would have thought about that. And I just thought that was really, wow. I wouldn't think ASL and Command & Color Ancient. Wait, what?
Right.
Huh?
Right.
But no, he pointed that out. And I was like, it was almost like an epiphany. And I will say this, it made it easier for me to unload the Memoir 44 collection because I was kind of attached to it. It was one of the first things I got when I got my hobby.
Okay.
But it made sense.
I can understand that.
All that said, that's all. Your turn.
That's all. Well, let's see if I can fill 20 minutes. So since we've last recorded, I have acquired one of the 2 games that were on my hunting list.
Okay.
And that game was Studying Emerald.
Right, which I'm jonesing to play, dude.
Martin Wallace, Matt, and I have been watching videos. We've played a learning couple of rounds and stuff like that, and we played a 4-player game of it already as well.
Who were the other 2 players?
Chad, not Paul Chad.
Right.
Chad. And our friend Jerry.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So we played a 4-player game of Studying Emerald. It was pretty cool. We're definitely looking to play more because, for example, when you go to BGG and you click in the forums for rules questions, there's 9 pages.
You would think the same for Panamax, but I digress.
No. This game has so many nooks and crannies from all the different card interactions and stuff like that. That's primarily what causes that. But the actual gameplay itself is straightforward.
So is it holes in the rule book?
It's not. It's just, I guess maybe you could say that from the standpoint of how
like
this
fringe
card
issues.
fringe issues of
Yeah,
how this
yeah.
card and this card interact.
Because obviously they can't. It'd be a volume
Yeah.
if they put every one of those in there.
Seems to me to be an experience game. In his design notes, Martin Wallace says that he's not sure if the game is balanced, and if it's imbalanced, he doesn't know what side is in or out of balance.
So isn't that definition of balance?
And so every game is going to be drastically different. Some games could be lopsided, but I think experientially, every game is going to be fun, but not everybody can handle that. Like you, my copy of Fire in the Lake came.
Rock on.
Courtesy of my brother.
Cool.
And Matt and I have dinked around with a couple of learning rounds. It looks pretty awesome. It's currently set up on the table in my basement.
As well it should be.
I need to follow through with a few rounds of play and try to learn that. Let's, your copy, my copy, let's start getting those to the table.
We need to for
this
upcoming
podcast.
episode, right.
I think that's a game that's going to take several plays, but it's not going to be easy to get those plays in. And I also acquired a game that I frankly was not expecting to acquire, but was required to purchase it after playing it here with you and Paul Chad. And that game is Craftsmen.
Obviously, I only buy good games.
Yeah, man. And frankly, I didn't even purchase it. I traded Hansa Teutonica for it.
And that's gonna draw some ire from folks because I enjoy Hansa Teutonica.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I've already played Craftsman more than I played Hansa Teutonica. And I've already enjoyed Craftsman more than I've enjoyed Hansa Teutonica.
Yeah, but
Hansa's dry.
oh, I don't care. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But see, if I said that, if I got rid of every game that, I enjoyed this more, then I'd have a very small collection, and I don't want that.
I'm going to lead in on the next section about what games we've been playing lately.
Sure.
I've been playing Craftsman and A Study in Emerald.
Wait.
And
Get out. Hold on.
Panamax.
You're kidding me.
Yes.
What, all those games?
All those games. Other than that, I mean, really, we've been filling gaps in that with Star Realms on the iPad.
Oh, yeah. I am addicted to that
Impulse,
game. Right.
more of that.
Yep.
Little things.
All right. So, but just those three, though. Really.
Just those three have been the big ones.
For the most part, same here. Panamax, Craftsman, not A Steady and Emerald yet. I expect you to fix that this week. Also, we played a 3-player of Colonialism, which we all loved when we played it 4-player. However, gotta say, not a huge fan of it 3-player. It just wasn't. It fell flat.
I can understand that 2-player, but 3-player I figure might be good.
Yeah, no, we see it as a 4-player game going forward. That's us.
Right.
Me, Amanda, and Paul Chad. Played it, and definitely it's a 4-player game. Interesting note, some people compare it to El Grande. He said totally different. Also, he's a big fan of splatter games, as am I, and he brought up Bus to play. It's a older...
I didn't know that was a splatter.
Yeah, it's an older splatter. The artwork is... You either love it or hate it. I don't love it. But it's a really cool, interesting kind of worker placement, route building, logistics. The whole gist of the game is people. There are people in the game. They want to go to work, they want to go to the pub, and then they want to go home. And you have to make bus routes for them. But you can also rip the space-time continuum in the game.
Freaks me out.
And so instead of advancing, if they're at work, they want to go to the pub, maybe they just want to stay at work. So don't want to go too much into it, but really cool, pretty simple, really, and short splatter game that really enjoyed. Definitely need to play it more. And when next time he comes up, hopefully we can get you in.
That'd be great.
Into a play. Also, like you said, Impulse.
Right.
He'd never played Downfall of Pompeii before. And so we were looking for something just kind of to kill some time and everything before he went home the other night. So we broke out Pompeii. We have a couple tea lights inside the volcano that turn on once it seeds and then once it erupts. And we have a house rule that you have to scream when Impulse go into. Absolutely, it makes the game. But yeah, so we had fun with that. But yeah, pretty much Panamax and Craftsman for the most part as well for me.
So let me ask you this question, good sir.
Sure.
Since your wife has put you on a purchasing hiatus, does that mean your list of games that you're on the hunt for is 0?
Oh, you're cute. No, not so much. I last looked at my wish list. It's 277 games long.
Cool.
Now, that doesn't mean those are games that I want to buy. That's wish list, like maybe games I want to at least inquire about and find out more.
What's the top one on that list right now? Right now.
This second, probably God's Playground by Martin Wallace.
Okay.
So yeah, if I weren't on a
well, even if that comes up,
freeze,
you're going to get it.
No, I won't. Actually, I won't. It's too expensive right now. It's about $200.
That's fair.
But After the Flood, Princess of Renaissance, and God's Playground. So all three Martin Wallace. Also, since our 2014 preview shows, there have been quite a handful of games that are now on my radar that weren't prior to recording, and I've made a geek list, and the geek list is 50 games long.
Nice.
Even though Gen Con is come and gone, and it wiped out those games.
Right.
But we'll definitely link to that in the show notes.
42 to 50.
And Gen Con's ended.
Minus, right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, for me, the only thing that's the highest thing on my list right now, last episode, it was A Study in Emerald and Endeavor.
Right.
Still Endeavor now since I've acquired A Study in Emerald.
I'm not as excited to try that as I am A Study in Emerald, but looking forward to trying it if and when you get a copy.
You should try both.
Oh, I definitely plan on it. Absolutely. All right, let's take a minute or 12, and let's focus on a couple of the side games that we both have been playing that we wanted to kind of expand about.
Yes, sir.
A little bit. You lead us off, sir.
All right. The game I want to talk a little bit about, and I do mean a little bit about, is Craftsmen.
Well, yeah, because you're not me.
Well, no. Well, it's because, believe me, I think I could expound upon it now.
Right.
But it's, as we talked earlier, off microphone, it could be the subject of 1 or 2 episodes from now. So I don't want to go too deep into it. But what I really want to do is kind of whet the appetite of our listeners.
All right. Rock on. Let's go.
Craftsmen is a 2 to 5 player game. In our experience, I've played it 3 times. I've played it 4, 2, and 3 players.
Okay.
It's about an hour per player.
That sounds about right, because our first game we played 4 players. It took about 4 hours. Yep. And with learning, mind you.
Yes. What's kind of going on in the game is that you're building an as-yet unknown Polish village into a big Polish city. They don't actually say Polish.
So why do you think it's Polish?
It's Polish-produced and designed game.
Okay,
so
valid
it's
point.
yet another awesome game from Poland.
Seriously, they're killing it.
Yeah.
Poland and Portugal.
Yeah. So it's in the late medieval period, and again, trying to build a as yet unknown village into a larger town. The game combines worker placement and a production tree resource conversion mechanic. The things you're typically doing are collecting money, buying building permits for the different production buildings, trading, selling, shipping the goods that you produce from those buildings. And all of that is by placing your 5 workers in the 6 different guilds to accomplish those things. Here's what I think is really cool about the game. A couple of points. The way the 4 different colors of money combine and work together, and the purposes of each color in terms of purchasing.
That set collection part. Right.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
Agreed.
It is and I'm going to use the word complex-ish. I just made that up.
Okay, we'll go with it.
Complex-ish game. Because you do have to plan ahead, and you do have to plan at least 1 turn ahead in lots of different respects. But the game plays easily, and the decisions just get more and more and more interesting.
Funny you mentioned that, because our buddy Paul Chad had mentioned that he thought it was at the end of the first year, because the game takes place over 3 years. At the end of the first year, he's like, so are we just going to do the same thing year after year after year, 3 times, boom, kind of like what some people say about
Francis Drake.
There you go. That's it. However, the one cool thing about this is by the end of the game, he's like, nope, not at all. Because the game, like that first year is a build-up year. The second year starts getting interesting. The third year is where the game is. You're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
I've heard some people kind of like when they were talking about Madeira, about complexity for complexity's sake. The one part of this game that I would agree with those folks that say it's complex just to be complex is the order in which the guilds, because the guilds resolve left or right.
Right. And they're set up in ways that...
Because, for instance, you build a building that you've acquired from a previous turn. Because you build buildings, then you buy buildings. And so you have to... It's backwards. It's not intuitive in that respect. And so it adds a layer of complexity that doesn't have to be there, but I'm glad is there.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's, I think, the point, right? It is complexity for complexity's sake, unless you think those things are awesome. And heavy gamers like us, we think those things are awesome.
I agree. Not all heavy gamers enjoy that. We happen to be a couple, or actually, I guess, 5 that absolutely do.
Please make me think 2 or 3 turns ahead.
Please. Yeah, exactly. Add that layer of complexity that isn't necessary, but I enjoy it. It stretches my brain. Yeah, or as Amanda says, puts a new wrinkle in my brain.
Yeah. One additional thing I think is really cool is the bonus tokens. When you complete certain production trees, you get a bonus token. They're only 6, 7, 9, 12 points. In a 250-point game, that doesn't mean crap. I just think it's really a cool, nice touch in the game.
And I dig that you don't get the bonus tokens for creating the end good. It's for creating the entire tech tree. So, for instance, when you need to make books, you don't just have to create the book or, just be able to somehow acquire the book, whether it's making part of it or buying part of the goods. You have to be able to raise the cows. You have to be able to produce the wax. You have to produce the wood. You have to produce the paper. You have to produce the leather, which is the
binding. And that's why you need the cows.
Right. And then you can and then you have to have the tech that allows you to produce the books.
Yes.
Once you have all of that in your own tableau, then you get the bonus.
Like I said, half a dozen points, right?
Right.
It's really cool.
It is. I dig it.
So last night, my wife played a 3-player game of Craftsmen with us.
Which really, truly is monumental, because she is not a heavy gamer.
No, she had watched us play previously. It was her first, what I think, truly heavy game.
Yeah.
She started out the game very roughly. She built every building she had in her hand.
No rhyme or reason.
Was acquiring almost randomly. And she ended up with this huge amount of buildings at the end of the game. And at the end of the year 1, she was kind of far behind. And then...
Hold on. When you say kind of far behind?
Like a lot of far behind.
Like 60, 70 points,
oh,
right?
More than that, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So bad.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
But
in year 2, she started grokking what's going on, and she had this huge set of buildings that she was able to add,
to
set of buildings.
Right.
Right. She started figuring out chains and making things. She started inching back into the game. By the end of the 3rd year, she passed me. I finished 3rd. She finished 2nd. And Matt just flat out housed us.
Right. But the fact is, she was competitive.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And she wants to play again.
Even better.
I feel like after 3 plays, sometimes in our side games, we maybe only played 1 or 2 times and we can't do a rating, but...
Or choose not to.
But
there are some that we do. For instance, my side game coming up.
Okay. I'm not going to give you a 1 to 4 rating on this game, because if we do talk about that in an upcoming podcast, I want to say what it is then and give a lot more details about why.
Yep.
But I will say this, and maybe this will be a heavy clue. I now have 3 games rated a 10 on my BGG collection. Le Havre, Trajan, Craftsmen.
Wow.
Enough said.
Wow. I did not expect that.
What game do you want to move on to, sir?
Well, I want to take a moment here.
Oh.
Hold on. A 10?
I know.
Damn. Okay.
You know how I am about my 10s.
Well, hell, a month ago, there wasn't anything that wasn't. Wow, a 10.
I treat 10s like nickels with manhole covers.
Hold on. Okay, I'm over it. Okay, moving on. So the game I want to talk about is the Columbia Block game, Hammer of the Scots.
Nice.
Wait for it. It's a real war game.
Nice.
So there's 2/3 of things that we've been honest about now.
Right.
Still waiting on that 18XX. So anyway, last Sunday, Brian, the buddy who muled the games from Gen Con and one of my wargaming buddies, he came over and we finally got a block wargame in. Both you, me, Brian, and a couple other folks, we have all these block wargames and we're like, oh, we need to play them. Well, yeah, finally we got one in. The game originally came out in 2002, but we played the 2nd edition, 2005. There is a 3rd edition, but it makes really minor changes, more cosmetic than anything. This is the second in the family of Columbia games, block war games. It includes Julius Caesar, Richard III, Wizard Kings, and Wizard Kings was the first of that. The cool thing about this series, if you want to call it that, is the fact that Columbia games, they're 8-page rule books. Anybody, grognard to, entry
Rookie.
level, never played a war game before, can get into this game. It was surprisingly simple, but surprisingly just fun, dude.
That's cool.
So it plays, obviously, it's only a 2-player game.
Mm-hmm.
With it being Hammer of the Scots, it's pretty obvious what the theme is, but for those that don't know, freedom, So obviously it's a 2-player game, Scottish versus the English. We busted it out with going over the rules in about 2 hours total. That was, the game has 2 scenarios. The first scenario being Braveheart, which is William Wallace, just like the movie. And the second one is the Bruce. You can play them either as individual scenarios or you can play them back to back, basically, and that becomes a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you play the campaign, it's going to take about twice as long. The game covers the First War of Scottish Independence from 1297 to the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. The 2 sides, the English and the Scottish, are asymmetrical, both in strategies as well as how the really unique wintering and reinforcements work. They are completely different. Totally, you have to have different strategies, different tactics, and the way the 2 sides operate are just totally different, which makes it unique and gives it that extra replayability. So stuff that I find cool about the game.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it's very true to history. Even though it's a basic game, it's a very low piece count. At a given time, you're talking 15 blocks per side. Yeah, so it's not that many. And so it's true to history without being scripted, which I really appreciate. In fact, one of the battles that we took place in the year. It actually took place in the place it took place, just because it just worked out that way. It didn't need to. Just that's where the battle took place, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice.
It has a really simple battle system with step losses. So basically, roll dice, and if you take a hit, you flip the block. So you
rotate.
Or rotate, sure. So you go from 4 hit points if you roll to 3, to 2, to 1, to dead. The turning of nobles is really cool. The whole crux of the game is you're trying to get control of these 14 nobles in the game. If you defeat a noble, let's say you're the Scottish, I'm the English. If you have the Scottish, let's say you have the Comere. I don't know the details on his family, but that noble. I defeat him in battle. He immediately flips over. You take your blue block out of the game, and I have the identical block, but it's red for the English, and he comes in the next round of battle on my side.
Nice.
So they flip instantly, and I think that's pretty cool. I dig that. Also, and I mentioned earlier, the wintering rules. So back then, there was no wars during winter. Everybody went home. So the game somewhat resets and really forces the English player to be super aggressive, because once all the cards are played, you get a hand of 5 cards each, and once you play them simultaneously, and then whoever has the higher number acts first, then you play again, so on and so forth. Once those 5 cards are played, the English go home. They leave. They basically, all the nobles on both sides go back home to their respective quarters, or regions, and then start over. And so the English have to be super aggressive, because they're going to essentially lose all the ground they've gained, but they keep the nobles that they won to their side.
Okay.
And then during reinforcements, you can heal up during the winter, so on and so forth. A couple things that I found, maybe not so cool. Like I said, there were some minor issues with missing information on some of the blocks, but it's more or less implied. You can figure it out. It's definitely not a deal breaker. The card quality is really low. They're really cheap cards.
Protector is mandatory.
Yeah, not even that. Just, if you do put sleeves on, problem solved. Sure, no big deal. As far as a rating, real quick, because I don't think it's heavy enough to necessarily be a featured game. That said, for a simpler rule set and brilliant design as it is, I think it's worthy of a spot of everybody who is, whether they're a newbie wargamer to a hardcore grognard. I think it belongs on everyone's shelf. Now, with that said, with this being kind of a series, with it being, like I said, Richard III, Wizard Kings, Julius Caesar, I think, I haven't played it, but I think I'm going to enjoy Julius Caesar more just because I enjoy the time period more.
Right.
But I would be willing to go out on a limb and say that everybody who is even remotely interested in getting into war games needs to own, if not this game, one of the games in the series based on the theme that interests you the most. So I'd give it a 4. Absolutely, go get one of them. And it's simple to learn, deep. It's a game I think I can get Amanda into, yet you and I could play it over, and not get tired of it.
Awesome.
So that's Hammer of the Scots by Columbia Games. So do you think they're ready?
Ready?
Yeah. Talk about Panamax.
Yes.
Let's go.
We tried to get an advanced copy of Panamax a month ago.
Yeah, give or take. A month, 6 weeks, whatever.
6 weeks. But we're still small fries in the gaming world of who's who.
Worst thing they can do is say no, right?
That's right. But as fate would have it, a good friend of ours, Brian, was going to Gen Con, and Edward, you convinced him to stand in line for us at the Stronghold booth.
You don't want to know the things I had to do. It's just...
Well, it was worth it because he came home with a copy of Panamax.
Yeah, and I'm excited that we got one of the advanced copies.
So good job to you convincing them. And Brian, thanks very much, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, regardless of what we think of the game, we appreciate the effort and everything that went into that. So thanks, dude.
There was only 120 copies of this game available right now.
Yep. That's what Stephen Bonacore, who's the publisher, Stronghold Games, that's what he said on Twitter not too long ago.
So we're very happy to be able to bring our listeners some details and discussions about this game. Sit back and enjoy the conversation, folks.
Here we go.
Panamax, obviously published in 2014 by Stronghold Games. The design team of Panamax is Gil Dore, Nuno Santiero, and Paula Soledade. A couple of those names are familiar from one of our favorites, Madeira.
Yep, episode number 1.
Number 1. The artist of this game is one of the members of the design team, Gil Dore. The player count for the game is 2 to 4 players. The length of time, they say 120 minutes. Let's dig right into that with a little bit of scalability talk. We've played this game 3 times. They've all been 4-player games. Our 4-player games have run 2.5 to 3 hours consistently.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So I don't think 120 minutes is necessarily right with full player count. So maybe with fewer players, game could play quicker. Let's talk about the components of the game real quick. Gorgeous.
Yeah, seriously, the artwork's fantastic. The back of the board has the map of the Panama Canal.
With some context.
Yeah,
of geographical location.
Right, which I thought was a cool touch instead of just the plain back, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we said, the artwork's gorgeous on this. The graphic design is nearly impeccable, in my opinion.
I agree.
There's one little thing about it, which we'll get into, but outside of that one little thing that once you learn it, it's a non-issue forever.
The player boards, the ship tokens are all thick. Yeah,
it's all really solid. The one exception to that is the coins for the money in the game, but again, we'll touch base on that. But yeah, just absolute top-notch, save for the coin.
Well, let's tell the listeners a little bit about what's going on in the game. Again, we never teach games. We just talk about what's happening in the game to give some context for the following discussion.
Yeah, there's a great video, a real quick how to play video out there. There's tons of ways to be. There's rule books online, yada, yada, yada. That's not what we're trying to do, but you guys know that. So without further ado, what's going on?
In Panamax, you're managing a company that moves cargo through the Panama Canal via company-owned ships and ships owned by other companies and the game, as well as moving some cargo by rail. As your company does those things, it earns money and attracts investment by the other players in the game, and you pay dividends when possible to all shareholders. The game comes with 2 ways to get started. There's a basic setup that is perfectly wonderful and fine, and there's an advanced setup where you have a little bit of play and control as to how much money your company starts with and how much money you as a player start with.
Yeah, pretty cool little variance in starting capital between the two.
That's important because the players themselves, not the companies, are the investors in the companies. And it's through your personal money and your investments that the game winner is determined. Over the course of 3 game turns, the players are going to load cargo containers and move ships to deliver that cargo and earn money to invest in other companies. Now, the game owns several ships itself. There are some military ships that don't take cargo. Players move them for money. There are some passenger ships that do take cargo,
which can seem a little dark.
Yeah.
Like you get container cards that come
The
with
people
passengers.
come in a container.
Yeah. Hey, we're not saying that they're smuggling, but they're smuggling.
It's
so
all
whatever. Good. Hey.
You know, one of the interesting things about the game-owned ships is there's this the Panamax, the San Juan Prospector. It's a 4-spot ship that has this really cool special ability.
And it literally is the biggest class of ship that's ever gone through the Panama.
It is a Panamax.
Yes.
One of the cool things is that no player controls these ships, but all players can and will use those ships at various times during the game. So as a player, you're the CEO of one company. Unlike a lot of other economic games with companies, the control of the company never passes from you. You will control that company for the entire game.
Right. There's no way for another player to wrest control from you, nor is there a way for you, like in 18XX, to dump a company onto another player.
So the main mechanic of the game is an action selection mechanic that allows players to either acquire cargo contracts or move ships that are already in play and loaded up. And by doing so, you're executing the pick up and deliver style mechanic in the game. Now, the cargo containers that you're transporting are represented by dice in your color. Now, the dice are not rolled. There's no random thing here. The cargo container says what value the dice will be.
Which is obviously 1 through 6, since they're 6-sided dice.
Exactly. So there's nothing random or luck about that. The dice are simply markers. When you acquire the cargo, you're going to have the ability to load 1 to 3 cargo elements onto the ships that are in play or onto the railroad in the game. Now, the cargo contracts are extremely interesting. They have 2 sides to them. One side indicates which loading zone the cargo is destined for.
And there are 4 loading zones. There's U.S. East, U.S. West, China, as well as the EU that I often call the Australian for some reason. I don't know. But yeah, I dig how that there are 4 distinct zones. What contract card you get dictates what ships in that or what zones
that cargo must be loaded into.
Right. You don't have a choice on it.
After you load all the cargo containers from that card onto the various ships in those zones, you will acquire a nationality token that relates to that zone. And they're very, very important to collect, but we're going to talk about those in a little bit. Now, the other side of the contract card, these contract cards are 2-sided, and this is one of the things that makes it really, really interesting. One side has 1 to 3 cargo containers that are needing to be picked up in a certain loading zone, the 4 you mentioned. The other side of the card has a generic contract that has 1 or 2 cargo containers on it that are always valued at a 3, so kind of just below middle of the run. But you're not required to place them in any specific loading zone. They're generic. You put them anywhere.
Right. So if you have, man, I really want to put this one over here and I really want to put this one over here, but I can't because it's a Chinese-only contract, well, maybe you flip it over. There you go. You're not going to get the nationality token, or the flag as we like to call it.
Yeah.
But you are going to be able to get your cargo onto ships to be able to ship.
They are wonderfully flexible.
Yes.
But like you said, you don't get the cool token.
Right.
But there's a complicating factor. Every card will require that some of the cargo be loaded onto the railroad. But that railroad icon is only on one or the other side. So sometimes it's not in your interest to take the generic side or the nationality side because of the railroad might be full or there's, other complications.
Yeah, depending on whether or not you actually want to load onto the railway, which is going to dictate turn order, yada, yada, yada. whether or not you want to may dictate which side of the card you choose. So maybe you really need that rail, so you have to take the generic, and that forces you to forego getting that bonus nationality token, the flag. So yeah, even choosing the contract has sub-decisions.
So selecting the cargo container cards, that is one of the two actions one can choose. The other is taking movement actions.
Which, as we say, ship, 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 ship.
So when you select a movement action, you're going to be able to have between 1 to 3 waterway movement points and 1 to 3 lock movement points. You see, the board depicts the Panama Canal, and it's broken up into the different locks, the different open water sections, river, lake, etc. And the ships have to expend the proper kind of movement point, waterway or lock, to move through the different terrain areas, waterway or lock. But here's the kicker.
And that is, okay, so maybe you get 3 waterway movement and you get 3 lock movement. Oh, awesome, I get to move all this stuff. But wait a minute, maybe my ships, or maybe where my containers are, I really only need, say, 2 lock and 1 waterway. Well, that other lock and those other 2 waterway, you have to use them.
You must.
And that is one of the keys to the game. The fact that it forces you, even if you don't want to use this extra movement, it forces you to move ships if available, whether they're yours or other. Therefore, there's kind of a unwritten cooperation, a forced cooperation, if you will, whether you want to or not. And that's where a lot of the player interaction comes from.
Now, when a ship completes its journey through the canal, all the different cargo dice that are on the ship will pay the company that owns those dice 1 money per pip. And then the owner of the ship will get a little special bonus choice to be made.
And by little, you mean significant.
Significant, based on the size of the ship. Because the company-owned ships are all size 1, size 2, and size 3. And depending on the size of the ship, you'll get a different choice of either personal money or a bonus card. So back to those nationality tokens. Each company has a player board, and that player board has 12 circles on them, 3 for each of the 4 nationalities. And within most even of those circles, there are special actions that you can take when you cover that circle with the appropriate nationality token.
Either you can buy shares of stock, you can take extra load actions, whether it's onto ships, whether it's onto rails, or extra movement, which always is useful.
I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a little civ building or something, kind of a feel where I'm building the capability of my company by delivering goods from all these different nationalities.
Right. I dig that every player board is different, first off, or they're all the same, but the lineup of where these little bonuses
the different bonuses are scrambled differently on each board.
Right. And so the decisions you make have an extra layer to them because maybe you need to work towards getting another option to buy stock.
Yes.
Or maybe you really desperately need this extra load or this extra 3 movement. And so you not only are worrying about where to ship, what zone, or that you need to move these containers, and not only what zone, but you need specific flags depending on what your strategy is to be able to cover these spots on your player board.
So speaking of that company board, you can also acquire tokens for delivering passengers on the passenger liners, the Spiel of the Seas.
Right. Passengers. Remember that.
Passenger containers. When you acquire a passenger token, they go on a special place on your company board that unlocks like permanent bonus rule breakers.
Right, which are the same on all the player boards. There's 3 of them.
Right.
And where you place the passenger, which one you cover up, dictates which of those 3. So your choice might be different than my choice, so on and so forth, until you get all of them, if you do get all of them covered.
So a couple of times we've mentioned the railroad. In this game, the railroad is kind of an end of the turn mechanic, and it's completely abstracted. There is no railroad depicted on the game board.
Yeah, we don't want to give you guys the wrong impression. It's spot for 4 cubes. The end.
Spot for 4 cubes.
That's it.
Dice.
Yeah.
And it's really only used to set the turn order for the coming turn And then each player that did contribute dice to the railroad will be able to select a nationality token as a bonus.
Right. Which then covers their player board, which then might be able to give them that extra movement immediately,
Right.
so on and so forth. So even though you thought that, oh man, X is going to happen, well, maybe not now
Right.
because you might get bonus movement, you might get to load an extra container.
Right in the middle of the end turn sequence.
Right, even though the turn is technically over.
So this game has a stock element to it as well. When a player buys a share of stock in a company, his own or another one, the stock goes up one step in value. And at the end of a round, after we resolve the railroad stuff, companies have to pay dividends out to all of their shareholders. These dividends are mandatory and they're critical. If you're unable to pay the dividend, not only are you not putting money into maybe your own pocket because you start off as a shareholder of your own company, but you also, your company's share value drops 2 steps.
Right. There's no way to mitigate that unless you pay dividends.
At the end of every turn, you're going to have to pay fees for all your dice, read cargo, that remain in various areas of the board. And this can be very expensive if unchecked. And a good business manager is going to see that these fees are mitigated every turn.
Absolutely, one of the single most important thing in the game to manage is limiting how much these fees, which range from $1 to $5
Yes.
per die. And you have a total of 9 dice per player color. So it's possible that you're paying as little as, I won't say none, because I don't think we ever had that, but I think the smallest payment we've ever had is 4, and I think we've had it in the low 20s as well, and that's coming from the company money. But if the company does not have the money to cover it, it comes out of your pocket as the CEO. And then if you don't have enough money to cover the shortcoming of your company because you did a piss poor job of managing your company that turn, you then have to take a loan.
A bailout token.
Right.
And those bailout tokens are brutal. They'll give you $10 now, but you got to pay 15 back at the end of the game.
Outside of maybe Le Havre, I don't know a game in which it's good to take loans. This is one of those.
The last little nugget of endgame stuff is the company that performed the best financially, and that includes like where your share price is and did you pay dividends. You're going to earn a little bonus that's called the Managing Director bonus, which is endgame victory points.
And you get those at the end of every round. There's 3 rounds, so there's 3, and they climb in value.
Yeah,
there's
3, 5, and 7.
Right.
At the end of the game, every player is going to add up the cash they have on hand, plus any cash earned from the financial advisor cards. And you can score up to 2 financial advisor cards.
And those are the secret bonuses or secret endgame goals.
Endgame goals.
That every player at the beginning of the game, you draft one of those, like you said, and then you're able to acquire more of those whenever you deliver your 3 cargo ship.
You also get cash for the Managing Director rewards we just mentioned. You then cash out all the shares that you've bought of yours and other companies at whatever their current value is. And then you have to pay off any bailout tokens you may have acquired.
Yeah, maybe, Tony. Let's roll into what makes this game heavy, what we think makes this game heavy.
Yes, sir.
So with that said, we brought in both Amanda and Matt, who have played the game a couple times, both 4-player games.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
And we thought, since this game is so new and there's so little feedback on this, we thought extra perspective would be a good idea.
Yes.
So let's roll.
In general, what I think makes this game heavy is the intense pressure to, as you alluded to earlier, ship. It's very expensive to leave dice in the warehouse, in the various loading zones, and often in half of the canal zones at the end of the turn. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You must keep your dice moving. You must keep your dice moving. You must keep your dice moving.
However, on that same note, you also have to be able to plan that, okay, if I move this ship again, it's going to go from a $1 penalty, for the maintenance fee, to a $3 maintenance fee, or maybe from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3, so on and so forth. Or it could go the other way from a 3 to a 1 or a 2 to a 1, and you want to be able to control that. You need to be able to plan where that movement is.
That's true. You want to be able to control that. However,
it's not entirely in your control. Other players can push your ships or ships containing your cargo, so it doesn't really matter. You kind of have to look at the potential movements made by other players and plan ahead to see maybe they'll actually push you into a cheaper spot, or just assume they're going to push you into a more expensive one, so don't be in that position when it's their turn. I mean, there are things like that, but you don't have direct control over that.
There's risk management.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to mitigate it. You have to try and look at, okay, Amanda's up last. I'm third. Is she going to move this ship? Does she have cargo on this ship? Is she motivated to move this ship?
Well, and also you may have set something up where you are going to end up in a cheap location. However, if the size of your ship happens to allow it to be paired up or be grouped with other ships, then they might pull you along anyway and cause you to pay more money just to cause you trouble.
It is possible, because we mentioned that there are forced movement. Even if you might not want to finish the movement, you have to finish the movement, right? If you have
you must
an extra,
move all your points.
Right. If you have an extra lock movement or an extra 2 waterway or whatever. So it could end up that you've taken all your actions and now I'm last and I have no movement left that I want to move because my cargo ships or my containers are in cheap zones and I can handle paying that maintenance fee. But you know what? I'm not invested in your company, so I don't mind hurting you. Therefore, maybe I have a little extra movement. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to help you along, Tony.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and move your
Thanks,
ship.
buddy.
I'm going to move your ship along. And here, now you go from paying 1 per container, now you pay 3 per container. So if you have 2 containers on that ship, it goes from a $2 penalty to a $6 penalty. You're welcome.
This is the furthest thing from multiplayer solitaire that I've ever played. And not only does the heaviness of the game result from this intense pressure to ship, keep your dice moving, it also results from that player interaction. You can make some educated guesses on what other players are going to do based on where their dice are, what their finances look like. There's public money in this game. These are publicly traded companies. And you have to plan accordingly. That person that comes after you in the turn order near the end of the round could move a ship because it helps them and hurts you. That's just business for them.
But it's possible if they've invested in your company that they're not going to put the screws to you because they don't want you to not be able to or have to have those extra fees to cause you to not pay those dividends. Because obviously dividends is money in your pocket, and that's victory points.
So, in addition, I mean, when you're talking about ships and dice and all of that, there could be a ship of one color carrying 3 other players' dice on that ship. So you actually have 4 players interested in what that one ship does.
Vested interest.
Yeah, and so, and that's positive and negative for all the players.
So with all that heaviness that we just talked about and all the decisions to be made there, is this a complex game, Amanda?
Yes and no. I feel like that this game is a lot simpler, I would say, than, like, say, Madeira. Because with Madeira, you have to really be thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead with the pirates and the dice and the
bread.
And the wood and the bread and the ships. And just there's so many things going on in Madeira that Panamax is complex, but I don't think it's anywhere near as complex as Madeira, in my opinion.
Is what you're saying.
Right.
Things in motion.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you do have to worry about in Panamax, but I feel like it's not as complex as other games, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that from a rule standpoint, right, they're not complex. The complexity comes in what we just talked about, all the different player interaction. You know, in our first game, we sat down, we read the rules, and we played.
Yeah, and this is the first rule book that Amanda's ever read.
Yeah.
Truly, the first rule book. We've been in this hobby a couple of years. Usually I'm the one that's reading, and I teach it. You know, I read through it ahead of time and then try and just teach her without her ever looking at the rule book. We had no problem. We had 3 copies of the rule book, one printed out, 1 rule book, and 1 on the iPad.
Yes. And it was us 3 in that game.
Right. And every question we had, we were able to answer in the rule book. We had no problem.
Right.
None. So the complexity is not in the rule book as far as we're concerned.
Right. Or in the rules themselves. The complexity is in the environment that the rules create.
Right, which is ideal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what you're going for?
Yeah, I think the rules are extremely clear.
A lot of heavy games require an awful lot of planning. Amanda just talked about the planning required in Madeira. The planning required in Craftsmen. What's the planning like this game?
There's definitely planning whenever you do what are they called? The in-game conditions. What are they?
Oh, the financial advisors.
The
right.
financial advisor cards that you pick at the beginning of the game. It's very that will dictate what path you take. If you take the cruise ship ones, then you're going to
the passengers.
Yeah, the passengers, then you're going to focus more on cruise ships. A couple times that I played, I selected the ones that had to do with flags.
For specific nationalities.
There was one
right?
that the last time I played, it was for specific countries. The very first time that we played, it was for any flag that I had. I got like $2 or $3 per flag. So I made sure that I shipped to as many different destinations as I could to get as many flags on my clipboard as possible.
Right. So that, like you said, that directed or that pushed you in the direction.
Absolutely. I completely ignored cruise ships.
There you go.
So I think the planning, for me personally, different in this game from other games, because the thing I want to plan the most is where I leave my ships.
And that's going to, I know exactly where you're going with this, and this is going to roll into one of the single biggest cool aspects, but also one of the biggest strategic things in the game.
This is exactly what I mean by this is the least multiplayer solitaire game that I've ever played.
And what that is the pushing of ships. There's only one path. It's very linear through the Panama Canal.
You going this way, you going that way.
Right. There are two directions, and there are the same amount of spots in both directions. The only time in which ships can be regrouped is in the lakes. Otherwise, they're either in the canal, in the lock system themselves, or they're in the skinny rivers. Therefore, you can kind of clog it up a little. If you have a chain of 3 locks right before you exit the Panama Canal, there's a series of 3 lock spaces. If someone has ships that's already in one of those spots,
which is what I like to do in my planning, I like to get a ship ahead of others into the locks.
Right, and stop. Stop. Now, if I pick up and I have a ship that wants to move in there, I have no choice but to either, if there's enough spaces available in that lock, I join your group of ship or ships, since it's 1 to 4 spots. Or if there's not enough spots left for my ship, whatever ship I'm moving, and by my ship I mean whatever ship I'm moving, whether it's your ship, Amanda's ship, doesn't matter. It then pushes that ship forward to the next lock. So even though you didn't move your ship, you stopped it in that first lock. If I want to move whatever ship I'm moving, I push your ship forward to the next lock, and that does not cost movement for either you nor I.
And I say, thank you, sir.
Right. And then, let's say I end up leaving my ship there. So now we have 2 of the 3 locks have ships in them. And then it's Matt's turn next, and he ends up either moving your ship or more likely comes in from behind, drives from behind, pushes another ship in, which then pushes the ship that I just moved into the back of your ship, which then pushes your ship forward to the final lock. And it's just a chain. And all of that only took 1 movement. So yeah, to say there's a little bit of planning in the game, I think is an understatement.
Is there any luck in this game?
There's randomness.
Yeah.
In the contract cards. Like, say specifically, you need a China flag, but there are no China contracts that come up. Just for an example.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Amanda. There's random.
Yes.
There's not luck.
Yes.
And the randomness comes into, at the beginning of every round, you're going to be rolling the dice and set up and based on the 4 executive dice, and as well as the action dice, the 12, 16 dice.
Depending on the players.
Right. So there's randomness and what actions are available and how many of each of those actions are available.
But it's mitigated by the mulligan rule.
Right, which allows you to spend $5 from your company.
No. I mean that if when the dice are rolled, there's a specific imbalance, you re-roll.
Right. If there's less than 4 on
Right.
one side, assuming a 4-player
Right.
game, right. And also, there is a way you mentioned to mitigate to where you can actually pay $5 out of your company coffers if you don't like a die that's over here on the movement side and you really need to load a contract,
Right.
and there's no contract dice. Okay, you pay 0, 2, or 5 depending on which flags
Right.
and which if you have the right passengers.
There's a cost associated with mitigating that,
Right.
but you can reduce the cost.
Right. So there's ways to mitigate the mitigation.
Hmm. So, and similarly with what Amanda said about, there's always 3 random contract cards that are up.
5, really.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? So if the China one isn't up, you can see 2 contract cards ahead. Plus, by acquiring a passenger token, you can get one of those special bonus rule breakers that allows you to have more of a choice up to and including the cards that are not yet available. I think there's one more random-ish feature of the game, and that is at the beginning of the game, each player is dealt 2 financial advisor cards, which are the end game goals for victory points.
Which are secret throughout the game.
And I must pick one of those and pass one to the left, and I'll get one from the player on my right. And then of the 2 that I end up with, I must choose one. So I don't ever get to choose from all of the available financial. I have this limited view of 3 basically cards that I need to choose one of to start my goals off with. And I think that can be a little bit random because as I might like a particular 1 or 2 of the cards after repeated plays, and I might not see those. Is that a problem? I don't think it is.
No, I think it adds to replayability because you might not ever see the same cards,
Yeah.
from game to game. I mean, the first game that we played, I saw completely different cards from the second time.
Yeah. There's one more thing I want to talk about with each of you guys individually. I want to start with Matthew, and I want to go around the entire table with the same question. So listen to it and prepare yourselves, but I'll put Matt on the spot first. How long did it take you to get this game, understand what's going on, and be a competitor?
I'd say after my second action die.
After your second action
Yeah,
die.
it was pretty
Awesome.
early. I don't. After the rules were explained to me, I didn't find anything to be ambiguous. I thought it was very clear.
Obviously, that's kudos to the teachers.
Yeah.
I mean,
There you
Hells
go.
yeah.
obviously.
End of the rule.
And to the rules. I think they're crystal clear. I mean,
Yeah.
they really are.
So did you not feel weird? How did you feel about the end of the turn? Like
Yeah.
I mean, did you think you understood what was going to happen at the end of a turn?
Yes.
Because 2 action dice is not the end of the turn.
No, it's not. But I think after 2 action dice, I understood what I was going to be doing during
Mm-hmm.
the main part of the game.
Okay.
At the end of the turn, when you start dealing with stocks. And so I didn't get the stock element of the game until the end of the first game.
Interesting.
And then when I played the second game, I got it.
All right, so the meat of the game you got,
Oh, yeah.
but until you saw how the stock pays out, how all that interacts, how all that comes together at the end.
Until I saw that it could be successful.
Okay.
Not by my own gameplay, but by others. During the first game. Then okay, now I get how stocks and investment are presented within the context of this game and its abstract world.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Amanda, how long did it take you to become a competitor in this game?
I would say it's pretty similar to Matt. It didn't take it probably third action die, maybe into first turn. But again, like Matt, with the stocks, it did take me a little longer. I still don't, I'm not the best at stocks in general. I love 18xx games, but I'm not really the best at managing a company or anything like that. But
yet you're really good at logistics when it comes to splatter games.
Right. But yeah, it's not a hard game. It's really not. It's not. It's a complex-ish game, but the rules are not difficult.
Okay. All right.
Since we're going around the table, I'll go next.
Yeah, you're next.
Yeah. I'm with Amanda on this, where after my first turn, so, and it's kind of like what Matt was saying. I saw how ships move and cargo gets loaded. I got burned by paying the fees. I understood the dividends, the railroad, all that stuff. After the first turn, I'm ready to be a competitor in the game.
up until the second game in which you had to take a loan. But we would, whatever. Yeah,
Ouch!
Sure. For me, shockingly, it took longer. The stock stuff, I knew, I understood. So that part I had before we even started the game. I understood that. But the actual pushing of ships and how all that interacted and where to park your ships, if you will, at the end of your turn and all that, that took me, seriously, it took me 2 full turns. Not just action dice, but 2 full turns to, it felt like I kept getting these aha moments. I would see it and I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, wow, that's cool. And just, I kept having those moments because unlike you guys, it didn't click for me nearly as quickly.
That is one thing in this game. I do think that this game lends itself to this
Discovery.
intermittent moments of like, ooh, that's neat.
Nice.
And it happens several times per game so far. I've only played 2.
Right.
But each time it's like there are moments where that's really a good interaction.
Yeah.
That really, that's something for me to look at in the future, and that's another element in this game that I can potentially manipulate or manipulate you into manipulating, etc.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So that you're seeing new stuff each game.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Obviously, there's a lot of great things going on in the game. And let's talk about some of the things that are very enjoyable to each of us during this game. And I want to lead off by saying that Panamax made Matt wear a Panama hat during gameplay in both games. And I thought that was super enjoyable.
Oh, no, that was cool. That was funny.
Every episode we say, theme doesn't matter, but it sure is awesome when it's there. It's there.
Oh, you cannot, this is not pasted on. Do you guys think it is?
No.
No.
I'm moving containers through the canal, baby.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
There's no doubt.
Ships.
On ships.
No, I definitely think that the theme fits perfectly. I think they did a remarkably good job of just, it makes you feel like you're running a shipping company through. Like today, Paul Chad kept looking at his different ships and he's like, oh, I got to do this. But man, I still got containers in the warehouse that I have to move. But I really need to get these ships need to come on. These ships got to move.
Right.
Let's go, people. Let's go.
He was saying ships and containers. He wasn't saying cubes.
Yeah, which we're guilty of.
That's
right.
theme.
Yeah, like in colonialism, we're talking, their resources or their, this is natural resources. And no, it's a brown cube, a yellow cube, or a black cube, right? Whereas this, you're shipping containers. I need to move my warship. I need to move my, my large
passenger liner.
Right, exactly. And that's rare for this group who, let's face it, we're heavy Euro folk. It's all about mechanics. So we don't, we call a cube, but not necessarily in this. It's not dice, they're containers.
Yeah. And to be frank, I am a sucker for theme.
Awesome.
If it is woven into the game. And it's like, theme for theme's sake is ridiculous to me.
That's the pace that on.
For example, and one of my beefs is like Arkham Horror or something like that. It's like it's not Lovecraft, but they're still using it as a theme, and people take it as what it is, and that has now become a standard sort of theme for people to soak up. And this is nothing like that.
Something else I enjoy about this game, it seems to me to be very polished and smooth. The mechanics of the game do not fight me. The decisions of the game fight me.
That's well put. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Because I'm not thinking about what I'm allowed or not allowed to do. I'm simply thinking about how am I going to get my containers onto my ships or onto ships, period, whether it's mine or yours or whoever's, and getting them through the canal. That's all I care about. I'm not thinking about the rules. Are you guys? You guys have played it less. So are you guys thinking about the rules when you're playing?
No. In my mind, it's like a web of possibilities that I'm thinking of specifically for my ships and my cargo. But I'm also thinking about all of the other players' ships and their cargo. And imagine it as a web, and there are knots in that web, right? And when I take my turn, I'm going to smooth that web out a bit. And when other people take their turn, they're going to introduce new knots. And so it's just I think there's a lot to be said for kind of focusing your strategy on the flexibility of your plan, right? But also because you have to take into account what other people are going to do or may not do.
Which is the perfect segue. If we have not been clear yet, let's be clear now. This game does player interaction right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah,
it's to that, and that's something,
and it's constant.
Yeah, and that's something for me that's often missing from some. Yeah, I'll say often. Yeah, often missing from heavy games is solitaire. You guys talk about multiplayer solitaire, but it's not only that, because there are some heavy games where part of the fun is appreciating what another player is doing kind of on their own. It's just it's just good to look at and see and appreciate what they're doing, and that's interesting. There are some other heavy games where the multiplayer solitaire is you could care less what someone else is doing.
Competition of decisions, for me, as I've said all along, is why I play these games, first and foremost. I mean, friends, yeah. But why I'm playing the game is the competition of decisions. How to mitigate those maintenance fees and where to park your ships and where to anticipate other people and how they're going to move is it's art almost. It's really, I really enjoy the mental gymnastics that's going to put me through. Looking at, okay, I have X amount of dollars in my company. I have X amount of dollars in maintenance fees I know coming up, provided you guys don't screw me. Okay, am I going to be able to pay dividends, which is so important, provided I'm the majority shareholder? And then looking at that, and maybe I'm heavily invested in Matt's company, and he doesn't have enough money in his company. So maybe with that next stock option that I have to buy, instead of buying mine, I'm going to buy his because the money goes into his company's portfolio so that he can now pay dividends and pay me and give me profit for that money I just got on, just invested.
But the trick is that by investing in my company, you may have caused the dividend payment to increase, and so that will render me unable to make the dividend payment. So in that way, then there's incentive for you, strangely, to help push some of my cargo
to lessen your fees.
Yeah, to lessen my fees, or even put money directly into my corporate account.
Good point. By delivering the ships, when you deliver those cargo, that's going to go into your company. Right. That's a good point as well. That just lends even more to the player interaction. Because I'm invested in his company, it might behoove me to help move his cargo along, whether it's his ship or his cargo, to help him save money so that his company can pay me dividends.
Absolutely.
I mean, if that's not the epitome of player interaction, I don't know what is.
Right.
And that, I'm just saying that as a thing I really enjoy.
And so much the better if both he and you have the same number of stocks.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Every game has a few nits to be picked.
Okay.
And I know we all have a couple, and I want to start with the stock element of the game.
For you, you're saying?
Actually, not.
Okay.
I like the stock element of the game, and I think, this is not a stock market game, but stocks are important in the game, and that I think it abstracts the real-world stock stuff in a manner that highlights the important parts of stock management in a game. For example, Master of Economy missed the mark on that. I think Panamax hit it. But I know that Matthew, not a fan of stocks and games.
I rarely enjoy games that involve stock markets in any way.
How do you feel about Panamax's stock market game?
After the first game, I was pretty neutral on it. I will say this: after the first game, I decided that it was the first game I had played that featured a stock market, in which the stock market didn't hijack the game. In that, where it's like it made the game. Why play the rest of the game if you just play the stock market, right?
Gotcha. So it's a complement to the game as opposed to the feature of the game.
And after the second game, actually appreciate what they've done with it. So,
nice.
So I have to say it's the first.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the first game featuring a stock market where it's like, I like this. It's okay.
Wow.
And that's a lot coming from me.
The other day, the reason I'm asking you this now is the other day you said, you felt that the stock was the weakest part of this game.
Yeah, and it was. And it may still be. I don't know yet. I played twice. But after the first play, like I said, I was pretty neutral on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was the weakest part of the game. And after today, after playing it the second time, it's like, this works with the game.
It still might be the weaker part, if you will, but it's not a detriment to the game, is what you're saying, right?
It might be, but I haven't decided that yet.
Okay,
but,
that's fair.
But it's not putting me off.
So during the component discussion, we talked about a couple of things that we didn't like. First and foremost, the money. The component quality, it's the same money that's in a standard Martin Wallace game. It's the plastic little, almost tiddlywink type money. And it's kind of a bone to pick, I guess, is it's a $60 game. Couldn't have made it maybe a $63 game and put quality money in the game. Yeah. Now, I understand that there is a price point thing that the publisher is trying to do.
There's
I
probably
get that.
Complex math.
Sure. So I get why they did it. It's just a bummer. Everything else about this game is so nice and so much quality. But then again, we have our own poker chips that we use for cases like this to where it's a non-issue for most, but I figure it should be highlighted. Another thing, and I had mentioned again in the component during the graphic design, was there was one little thing that kept it from being nearly perfect as far as graphic design goes. They nailed everything from the markers that keep track of your lock and waterway movement to just where the starting ships go. It's just so much of a win on the graphic design. So I love it. However, on the captain cards, there is the same symbol as the movement for waterway. And so, yet on these captain cards, it's ambiguous movement. It's both waterway and lock. And even though it's got the light blue and the dark blue, the symbol on the captain cards is the same as waterway movement. So that at first will become, it's confusing. Right. But once you realize that's what that is, you'll never forget it, and it's a non-issue.
Yeah, and that same symbol is used on the player boards.
For the bonus movement.
Good call.
So it's also located there.
Right, and they should have figured out a way to integrate both the lock and the waterway movement. But again, that's a nitpick because once you know that once, you're not going to forget that. Even if you don't play the game for 6 months, you're going to know that. Mm-hmm. Lastly, the only other thing that I can really bring up, and again, it's kind of picking nits, although the community at large seems to disagree with this, we had no problem with the rulebook. I know a lot of people have a million questions. I don't get it. And I'm not saying, ooh, look at us, we're so smart. It's just, I don't understand where the confusion is in the rulebook for the actual learning of the game. However, on the referencing in play, that's where I can see a problem being because it's too many things are in the margins, yada, yada, yada. Just, it's not real clear for reference, but it's rare that a game is good for both learning and for reference. And this sadly fails on the reference point as far as I'm concerned.
We had to find some things that were only in the sidebar, not in the rules text. And that was also pointed out by one of our Twitter followers, and he's right on the mark.
Yeah. If it's an important rule, make sure I know it's an important rule. Don't put it on the side, like almost like flavor text.
No harm in putting it in there twice.
Seriously.
Once in the text, once in the sidebar.
Right.
I'd like us to, as a group, hit on a couple of broader discussion points. Negotiation.
Nearly non-existent.
Unnecessary due to the mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but expound on it.
Yeah, if you want somebody to do something for you, then you set them up to do it. Or you set yourself up to take advantage of their next move.
Yep.
So
or the next 5.
So you're saying to lay it out on the board, it's the game state's telling the other players what you need them to do for you, what you can do for them.
You set it up so that they help you out. And if by helping them out a little bit, you help yourself out a lot, you do it.
Yep. Are the gold cards unbalanced, the financial advisors?
No.
And you've only played it twice, so you don't think so at all?
No.
Like, you think flat out just boom, none?
None.
I agree. I played it 3 times. They're perfectly fine.
I'm not arguing with you. The one question I do have is the 2-passenger goal cards or financial advisor cards. That's what we're talking about. End-game scoring. There's one that regardless of what value that passenger is, because they range from 1 to 5, regardless of what it is, it's $5 for every one you get, right? There's another one that gives you face value of all the passenger card tokens that you get. I don't get it. One obviously is going to be stronger than the other, because if they're all 5, or this one's 5, this one's 4, this one's 2, this one's 1, obviously the 5-passenger one's stronger. Am I missing something here? You guys don't think at all that those are unbalanced? Obviously one's stronger to me.
Well, I guess I'm thinking broader. Sure, cards are probably going to be better than others in one or two comparisons, but I don't think that there's any one card or two cards in the deck of financial advisors that is the obviously most powerful. Can't win without this card.
In that respect, I agree with you, but I do think that some are stronger than others.
But none are.
There's no house rule needed to nerf one of them, is what you're saying, right? Yes. That I would agree, but I definitely think there are some stronger than others.
I think the 2-passenger ones synergize together better than any other 2 cards in the deck.
Oh yeah, if you can get your hands on both of those, sure, you're doing the same thing and getting double points for it. Sure, I get that.
Do you like the fact that there are financial advisor cards in this game, Amanda?
Yeah, I do. It helps me to focus on a good path to try to win instead of there being I'm better with direction and one task to do or whatever. So it really helps me to really focus on what I want to do to try to win the game.
Cool. 2 words. Analysis paralysis.
You tell me.
I think that's why the game plays 3 hours, because it's definitely a game that fosters analysis paralysis because of the intricacies of the interactions of the players and the ships and the cargo dice. Players are spending an amount of time considering how to position their assets for best results.
Let me ask you, on that AP thought, and you said, they're busy analyzing. So are you saying there's no downtime? And by downtime, I mean, when it's not your turn, are you able to focus and try and plan out your turn at all? Do you guys think? You're shaking your head no.
No, it depends, because if the person that is the first player of the turn, if they're taking forever and you're the 4th player, you might as well get up and go get a soda or go to the bathroom or something, because you cannot plan anything because you don't know what dice are going to be left. You don't know what ships are going to be moved, what ships you may get to your turn and you have 5 dice in the warehouse and there are no ships with them on. It just you can't plan if you're that far back.
But what about, say, on the 3rd player's turn and you're 4th, or if you're 2nd and it's the 1st player, can you plan that far ahead, do you think? I think
you can get a good idea of what you might want to do, but don't set it in stone until it's your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
That's well put.
Edward, 2 times in our plays, you began the game as a loner. You went all by yourself in this little area
on one side of the board, right?
You put yellow dice all over yellow ships. You totally avoided the player interaction.
It wasn't on purpose, mind you.
It was not on purpose. It's how things worked out.
Right.
In the first game of that, you finished in 3rd place. In the second game of that, you finished in 1st place.
Yep.
Expound.
Well, like you said, in just about every game, I think I've started last. I'm not kidding when I say every game. That would be the one luck part as far as the initial choosing of who's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
That's a good point.
Okay, so there's a luck component for you. But again, there's luck in the seeding order in 18XX in the setup.
Sure.
So that's the only luck in this game. I've started 4th or last, whether it's 3rd or 4th, depending on whether it's 3 or 4 player game, every game. So it's possible that I've been pigeonholed into what's available. Like, okay, everybody's moving ships, everybody's loading ships. Okay, so I could either try and take the leftovers if you guys haven't filled ships or whatever, or I could choose to move and do something completely different than what you guys are to try and exploit a path not taken. And that path not taken, in some of those cases, in those two you brought up, half the board was neglected. And so, say China over here, along with, what is it? I think it's U.S. West, I think, is on one side of the board, and there's China, or U.S. East and the EU on the other side of the board. Well, nobody was over here in China, and there was a perfectly good China contract card. And I'm like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to go with. And so it wasn't on purpose that I was avoiding the interaction, and almost to the detriment to myself, I had to go it alone. So I didn't have you guys helping me move my ships loaded with my cargo because you had no motivation because it was my cargo on there. However, what I was able to do in the second game better than the first game is exactly what you said you try and do, is park your ships in a spot in which it forces you guys to come in behind and push me along. And so that's where going it alone didn't necessarily hurt me as bad as you might think.
Last bullet point for general discussion, turn order. You just mentioned the first turn order, you know what? That is luck. It's randomly determined.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's determined by your placements on the railroad. How much does turn order matter in this game?
I always made sure that I had dice on the railroad so that I was going first or second.
Why?
Matters to you.
Matters to me.
Well, no, but
because
why?
I wanted to have my choice of dice. Whether I
Flexibility.
wanted to move, get a contract, I wanted to try to be able to make sure that whatever I wanted to try to do was there and available to me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I always had dice.
Because you
on the
did that
railroad.
exact same thing in this last game, you said.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Because I wanted to either get the exact contract I wanted, or I wanted to set as many of either my ships or ships carrying my cargo, set them up to be pushed by others.
I don't give a rat's butt about turn order in Panamax.
At all. Period.
At all.
Amen.
At all. The only reason I care to get on the railroad, so I get a bonus nationality token.
Okay.
But if you go first, there's validity to what these guys are saying about, having the first choice of the contracts that are available and stuff. There's ways to, mitigate that, enhance your options and stuff like that. When you go early in the turn order, there may be less advantageous dice to choose in terms of fewer movement points and fewer load actions. When you go later in the turn order, the earlier players could be removing those dice, leaving you with richer movement and richer load actions. So, and both are valuable. I don't think it's always awesome to go first, always awesome to go last. I literally don't care what turn order I'm in.
Early turn order gives you more choice, weaker dice. Later turn order gives you less choice, stronger dice.
Yeah.
And by dice, we mean powerful actions.
Yes.
I agree with you guys. I would say 95% I agree. There was one case that I learned today in which turn order hugely matters. Before the game started today, by the time my turn came up, again going last, I knew I was going to lose the game. Or I should say that I knew that I was going to be playing catch-up and I had to be perfect the entire game to be able to beat you guys. The reason that is because I was going last in turn order, and the financial advisor card, the secret gold card that I chose, was that passenger for the cruise ships, the $5 per passenger. And the reason I knew I was SOL is there are a finite amount of those passenger tokens. And I want to say there's 6 of them, give or take.
Yeah.
I was last in turn order. By the time turn order got to me, those cruise ships had loaded up enough between the 3 of you guys.
Yeah.
There are 3 cruise ships in the game. Each of those holds, 2 or 3,
2 or 3,
I believe, right? So you're talking potentially all those tokens are gone before I even had a chance. So that tells me if I am going to be able to do anything at all with that gold card, with that secret advisor, like Amanda said earlier, one of hers scored her like 20, 22 points.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was neutered before I even had a chance to do anything, I knew I was going to get 5 points at most.
Let's be clear. You neutered yourself. This is not a flaw in the game. It is a catch in the game that an experienced player, and unfortunately, experience gives you the lesson first.
Yeah, sure, no doubt. Right. No, I'm not griping about it. Right. And understand, I am not complaining about this.
This is like an oh crap moment.
Right. But this goes back to that AP. I have never my life had more AP in any single game. This is the single hardest game I've ever played in my life.
You are not an AP person.
Right. But I tanked because I knew I was playing catch up the entire way. And I knew I had to be perfect. And even so, I probably wasn't going to catch up. Newsflash, I finished last. But I made it closer than I thought I would have. But it kind of extended the game longer because it took me so long to try and work through every single decision. And it was a mistake on my part for choosing the gold card going last. But that's an experience thing.
Yeah.
So it's not a flaw, but turn order does matter in that case. But otherwise, I agree with you guys. Earlier, more choice. Later, stronger dice.
Let's talk about the San Juan Prospector.
Which is the Panamax ship.
The Panamax ship. It's unique amongst the ships because of its special ability, where it'll give you double the payoff.
For one of your cargo.
Right. I know, Matt, you've got some points about this.
Right. In both the games I played in, I think this ship specifically has been underutilized by all the players, or we simply haven't explored its potential yet.
Okay.
And I think that we've also been playing the San Juan Prospector too defensively. I think that its real potential is in its ability, to double the dice, right? The payoff. And I think, and again, this goes back to this whole the thinking, the rethinking I had about the stock market is I think the San Juan Prospector and the stock market are linked somehow. I don't know if this is on purpose, in terms of what the designers were thinking, or if it's just a happy kind of outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great way. The link I see is for the extra income.
It's the extra
pay dividends.
There's the extra income, yes, for the individual player. But there's also this way to look at it as a means of increasing the funds in your opponent's companies if
that you're invested in
stock.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
they pay dividends.
Because I was so close to paying dividends, right? And had we been using that ship more often, there were two players that had incentive that, that ship alone would have allowed me to fill their pockets and mine, of course, but by paying dividends. So I think I see that as a way, that ship is something it's unexplored potential for us, I think, still.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I dig, like I was saying earlier, about the whole investing and helping you move your ship if I'm invested, or in this case, maybe helping you trying to leave that ship behind to allow you to load cargo on that instead of me, it's able to ship even though it's got open spots. Let me go ahead and ship it and shut you out.
Because we don't know. Because you could put one of your dice on that ship, right? Because you want to be on that ship. Let's face it. But also, I think you definitely want someone else on that ship, and there's a good chance that fellow passenger on that ship is going to be a company you want to invest in or have an eye toward. I think that's something we can look at in future games.
We had a listener, Brian F., email us some specific questions about Panamax. We want to thank Brian for the opportunity to address them as well. So he's got 3 of them. Are there similarities in Panamax to Imperial/Imperial 2030 in terms of the economic aspects of the game?
Well, it's a Matt Gertz game, Rondell, but I think what he's getting at is the fact that you invest in other countries,
right?
But you don't own the country. You are not the country.
Right.
You're just an investor.
Right.
What do you think?
I think the similarity ends at you're investing because, number one, like you said, you're investing in countries. You don't own the countries. You will control the activities of that country as long as you're the major investor. In Panamax, you never lose control of your company. In Imperial 2030 and in Imperial, there's a bit of a war game aspect where you're building and destroying units and taking over territories. That is completely absent.
Right.
In Panamax. In Panamax, there's, as we talked, tons of player interaction in Panamax, tons of player interaction in Imperial. But in Imperial, it's more like the game diplomacy. It's at times adversarial interaction.
Right. So in a nutshell, I think the only similarities is that you represent a country or a company in this case, and you're investing in it. That's, I think, where the similarities really end. Mm-hmm. So outside of that one thing, I wouldn't say they're anything alike.
They're nothing alike. His second question was, how does teaching Panamax compare to teaching Madeira?
Well, you and I are the two main teachers of our groups, so you take this first.
Well, I recently taught both.
Okay.
And Panamax is much easier to teach. The rules are straightforward, as we've talked about in this episode. Less complex game than Madeira, in my opinion. And so I think that teaching Panamax is an easier task.
Yeah, I agree. It's shorter, it's easier, it's more direct.
Brian's third question was, what game does Panamax feel the most like? This triggered some interesting discussion the other night, and I think my opinion, Brian, is honestly, it doesn't feel like any other game I've played.
I can't think of one. When I saw this, I was like, I went through all the list of games that I've played and that I've owned. I got nothing. I've
just not seen player interaction this well done in a competitive, not cooperative game. And that's just, that makes this game feel like really none others I've played to date. Could be others out there. Could be games out there, obviously, I haven't played.
Sure, right, yeah.
From my own experience, this one's unique.
Yeah, I like I said, I got nothing. I don't think there's anything that comes to mind that I've played. Again, I'm still fairly new to the hobby.
So, Brian, man, we hope we gave you some good answers to your questions. Again, thanks a lot for that. If any of you other listeners have questions you want us to address about the games we're going to be talking about,
hit us up. Seriously, yeah, obviously we'll address them. We want to include our listeners on this.
Because Brian talked about Panamax and Madeira, and because Panamax and Madeira is generally the same design team,
right?
Nuno and Paulo being the common components of the design teams.
And that, let us preface, that's the only reason we're going to even compare these two is because of the designers.
Yeah. Let's be straight up. These games are not remotely the same.
Yeah, they're totally different. The only thing they have in common is they're heavy.
They're heavy.
And the designers.
And we dig them both.
Yeah, literally that's it.
That said, being the nerds that we are, we like to talk about the experience of games. And given the similarities that we just talked about, the designers, their heaviness, and the digness, we wanted to do a little comparing and contrasting on a couple of experience elements of the games. So Edward, Amanda, Matthew, and myself each answered the following questions. And these questions were inspired by Brian's questions. First question we asked ourselves is, which game, Madeira or Panamax, is more complex? We all said Madeira is more complex than Panamax.
However, harder to play well, all of us said Panamax.
Yes.
So even though Madeira is more complex, we felt that to be able to do well and play well, Panamax. So found that kind of unique in that we all thought, and we all went around and we took different orders. So it wasn't one person trying to lend their opinion and try and push other people into their opinion.
Now, we also asked ourselves, which game do we think is more enjoyable?
Personally, obviously.
Personally. Right. For, whatever reasons make a game fun for each of us individually.
Me? Now, let me preface one thing.
Yes, sir.
We tried. Now, obviously, Panamax is the latest hotness.
Right.
And Madeira's been out about a year now. And so we've played Madeira, 5-6 times, whatever. And we haven't played it in a few months.
I played it 2 weeks ago.
Okay. I have not played it, and Amanda hasn't played it in about 5-6 months. And both you and I This was our number one anticipated game of all of
Panamax.
2014, right? It was Panamax. So with that said, we tried to keep the whole latest, greatest, it's, whatever's newest is the best. We tried to keep that in our minds as far as trying to...
Not influence.
Right. We're human, so maybe it does. I don't know.
Right.
But we tried. We were aware of that. Even so, 3 of the 4 of us said that we enjoyed Panamax more than Madeira.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean we didn't enjoy Madeira. All of us really like Madeira.
Yes.
All of us really like Panamax. However, not both, but all 3, me, Amanda, and Matt, all said Panamax that we found more enjoyable. You're the one that said Madeira.
Yep, that's what I said. After today?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
So it's close.
Yeah.
And I think and I don't want to answer for you guys. Is it close for you, or is it a clear cut one way or the other?
Madeira is very interesting because there's so many different things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But I find Panamax more enjoyable.
I find Panamax more enjoyable because of the level of player interaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what
and
seals
that's
it
fair.
for me.
For me, it's the chaining. Just like in Madeira, there's that chaining of decisions in that long-term planning. And I like the player interaction. I like the kind of cooperativeness that isn't quite cooperative
We don't
necessarily.
like to label it.
Right. But that's why I'd say Panamax. But it's close. It's definitely not clear cut for me.
The thing that made me, say Madeira is I really enjoy the complexity, and I think your decisions are more fragile. I guess the bottom line is thank you to the design teams, to the publishers of these awesome games.
Yep.
Panamax and Madeira. A heavy cardboard thank you to you guys. Now, what I want to do next is return to my partner in crime here, the other half of Heavy Cardboard. Let's wrap this up, return our focus to the game of Panamax. Let me know what your summary of all this discussion that we've had this evening.
There's a lot more interaction in this game than I thought there was going to be, first off. Player interaction. I enjoy the stock market, although it's muted. It's not the key to the game. The stock market is, compared to an 18XX, pretty blah, I would say. Even so, I love the theme. I love the player interaction. I love the mechanics of how ships can be moved or pushed. And it's just a lot of win for me. I really love the pressure that this game puts you on.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's a frustrating game at times, when you can't always do what you want to do, there are ways around that usually, and every decision feels like it matters, and that matters to me. And that, to me, is what makes a great game.
I agree with you that Panamax is indeed a great game. I only have a 5-word summary.
Okay.
And each word is its own sentence.
Oh, you're going to bring up that word, aren't you?
Elegant.
There it is. I knew it.
Fun.
Yep.
Accessible.
For the most part.
Interactive.
Oh, absolutely.
Crunchy.
Oh, very. Yeah, I agree. That sums it up pretty well.
So let's give this game a rating.
Just a quick reminder, we rate on 1 to 4. 1, don't ever want to see it again. 2, 3, really good game. 4, go buy it. So, I hemmed and hawed for what felt like about an hour and a half on MOE. I'm going to do this real simple. For me, it's a 4. Go get it.
For me, it's a 4. Go get it.
All right, that sums it up. Thanks and good night. No. So at this point, normally we go into other side stuff, BGG stuff, what else is going on, so on and so forth. We're going to nip it in the bud. This is already running long, so we're going to cut that stuff out tonight. Just a quick reminder on how to get a hold of us. You can hit us up on Facebook, Heavy Cardboard, on Twitter, @Heavy Cardboard. Email us, please email us, heavycardboard@gmail.com, or on the web at our website, heavycardboard.com. So, yeah, that's Panamax. Thanks for listening. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Edward, Matt, Amanda, thanks for a good weekend. You guys specifically, thanks for joining us on this podcast episode. And let's have a less eventful week this week.
Yeah, seriously. Leash your dogs, people.
Leash your dogs.
Please.
See you guys later.
Bye.